Ding dong YouTube, welcome back to the channel, The Jobless Coder, and I want to start by acknowledging the last video I uploaded, which was a bit of a ranting video, and I basically went completely off on the rails on that. If you want to know what it was all about, then subscribe to the channel, go check that video out. But for today, I want to keep it a bit more lighthearted, because I don't just want this channel to be a bunch of ranting videos or complaining all the time about not having a job or being victimized by job scams, but I do have actual helpful information that I'd like to share as well. Which is why today I want to share with you my #1 Photoshop alternative. Now, this is a software tool that I've been using for about 10 years now, and I actually prefer it to using Photoshop for several different reasons, which I will cover. The first reason, though, is because it's actually free. If you've never used Photoshop before, then you should know that Photoshop has, I think it's a $10 a month licensing fee that you pay to Adobe for the ability to use their software. And I mean, $10 isn't a lot, but for someone who's like me, who's cheap, who doesn't have a lot of extra money, I mean, maybe you only have an additional $10 in your budget at the end of every month. And now you have to decide between, I don't know, a Netflix subscription or using Adobe Photoshop. And I mean, if you can do the same things that you would otherwise need to do in Adobe Photoshop for free, then just why not do that? And then you can still get your Netflix subscription. Now, I do pay, I think it's $25 US a month for the ability to use Adobe Premiere for the video editing software, because in terms of video editing software, there isn't a whole lot of great alternatives to that. And if you want the entire Adobe Suite package, I think it's like $60 or $65 every month, which includes the entire Premiere and Photoshop and Illustrator and After Effects and all of the other stuff that's just bundled together. Now, another thing I want to say about Photoshop before I show you the software that I use is that I actually took a class in my old university on the fundamentals of using Photoshop. So it's actually something that I do know how to use. And I mean, you don't need a university class for that either. I mean, you can go on YouTube and there's tons of tutorials. You can just self-teach yourself how to use it. And it's fairly simple to be able to use Photoshop and figure everything out. And if you play with it long enough, then over time you'll eventually pick up those skills. That being said, however, my philosophy has always been keep it simple, stupid. And I will tell you right now that if you've never used Photoshop before and you open it up on your computer, Photoshop is not simple, stupid. There are buttons and widgets and menus and all kinds of things plastered all over your screen, and you have no idea even where to begin. It's an absolute mess. It's like the whole thing just exploded on your desktop, and you're left there wondering, holy jeez, how do I use this? Am I even going to use any of the things that are available here? Which is why I recommend this alternative software instead, because it's simple to use and there are minimal things that are installed by default. You can actually go and get plugins, and the community online for the plugins is quite expansive. There are literally hundreds, even thousands of different extensions and plugins and features that you can add to this software at your own will. And that's what I like best about it, is because you pick and choose the things that you want to have. When you're using Photoshop, you don't have a choice. It's just there, it's built into the software, and you may never use it, but it's taking up space, and it's taking up, and it's making it more confusing for you to use because you don't even know what it does, and it's just there. And for some people, that may even turn them away from photo editing and that in general. They may just decide, oh, you know, this looks too complicated. I don't want to learn the skills that are required to do this. I don't want to sit for hours watching tutorials on YouTube. I just want to do a simple, quick edit on this photo. I want to crop it, maybe add a frame, and all of that can be done very simple with the software that I'm going to show you. I'm actually going to switch over to my desktop now to show you what I'm talking about. So now that I'm on the desktop here, the software that I'm referring to is called Paint.net. And to get it, you're going to want to go to this web address, getpaint.net. Now, a lot of people will make this mistake and they'll type in paint.net into the browser. That will take you to some website where you can buy buckets of paint or something. So this is not what you want, but what you want instead is paint.net. And the reason for the .net is because it's built on the .net framework. And if you know anything about .net software, then I will say, fortunately, this is a Windows-only application. So sorry to any of the Mac users out there, you won't be able to use this unless you know how to run an emulator that can simulate a Windows environment on your Mac. And the other thing that's really nice though about this is that you don't well, I won't say you don't need to install it. It has this button here. You click on it, it opens the installer. But there's a portable option too. So if you're on, say, a school computer, if you're on a university computer where the admin has restricted any privileges or rights to be able to install software, you can actually go over to this forum page, which I'll link in the description here. And you click on the link here. It'll open up. It's like a kind of zipped file. It's here. It's .paf, stands for portable, and then .exe. And so you'd run that application, and essentially it would install the entire thing to a zip file, and then it would extract everything, and it doesn't install it on your computer like most software will do, but it'll function exactly the same. So whether you are using the portable or you're using the standard installation of paint.net, the folder structure is going to look something similar to this once it's installed. It'll have some of the files in the main directory here. It'll have this file that's called paint.net. That's the application that will open it. And then it's got here resources, shapes, file types. And basically the only thing you would need to know that here it's installed in the program files path is the effects file. Because I mentioned before the custom plugins, and I'll show you a bit further into the video on those, but this is where all the custom plugins go that allow you to add those features that some of the features, like I said, Photoshop may have by default. You can just add these at will. So I'll actually show you the software now. I'll open it up here with an untitled document. So this is what it looks like. And you can see here, they've got all of the typical things. They've got image, you can resize the image, change this canvas size, flip it, rotate it. You can do stuff with the layers, you can do adjustments, and then the effects. And the effects here, these are mostly where the plugins will load. Paint.net comes with a few basic standard effects that will be in here, but for the most part, these are all custom added. I put those there. So you can see that you've got a tools panel on the side here. So you've got things for selecting regions. So if you want to work within a specific region, you just do that. Maybe pick a few different colors here, do a gradient in that region, and then you can have a paintbrush tool, pick a different color. You can draw around with that. You can change the brush sizes up top here. So now you got the big brush. To deselect it is there. You've got a color picker, so you can pick here. You can see the color over here is changing when I go purple and then white and then back to purple. It's got a text tool, so type some text. You can change the text size, change the font style, all types of different things like that. You got the paint bucket tool here. You got the eraser if you want to erase things. There's a cloning tool. There's a pencil, which is just a 1 pixel line. So if you just want to draw a 1 pixel line, you can do that as well. It's got custom region selections, so you can select things of different region sizes. It's got a magic wand tool to automatically select things for you. And then it's got zooming features, really nice side to side scrolling with the shift key. So you can scroll with the shift key or up and down, zoom in and out. So it has really nice form control. And in addition to the tools on the side here, they have the adjustments here. So we've got this pink, but if we want to change it, we can go to hue saturation and you can change it to whatever hue you want. You can make it more saturated or less saturated, change the lightness and the darkness. They have a thing on here for color balance, where you can basically make it more red if you wanted, make it more green, magenta, all that is available option. That's all installed by default. They've got levels here, so if you've got an image, for example, it'll have a histogram on the side, and if you know anything about levels, then you can get the levels within the histogram readings. It's got layer properties, so you can rotate the layers. It's got all kinds of features and functionality. So I will say that some of the things that you can't do in Paint.net that are available in Photoshop is really, I'd say, more advanced type of stuff. Maybe some stuff with like image warping. If you want to do anything with animations, then you definitely need Photoshop for that. One of the things that comes to mind just now is if you have, say, a really expensive $3,000 camera, or not even a $3,000 camera, maybe just a $500 or $600 camera, chances are there's probably a setting in that camera to save the images as a RAW file instead of as a JPEG, as most cameras will save images as a JPEG. And when you're working with professionally done images, you want to do that in Photoshop. You want to import it as a RAW file because it doesn't have any of the colors and anything like that automatically auto-corrected by the camera. And so you just get the image data, and then you can work in Photoshop to better adjust the colors and the saturation and everything to make it look as professional as possible. But I'm going to give a wild guess and say that most people that have a camera that has that option probably don't even know that that option is available. And most people are probably not even concerned with high-level professional image editing. Like I said, they just want to open the image and they want to add a frame and they want to do some cropping on it. Maybe they want to change the colors a bit. Maybe they want to move people or objects and stuff in the image around. All of that can be done for free. You don't need Photoshop to do that. But I mean, if you want to have 100 or 200 or even 1,000 different brushes in Photoshop to play around with to do some crazy artwork, then sure, go right ahead and get the subscription for that. But chances are you're going to install more brushes in Photoshop than you're ever even going to use or have a need for. I mean, Paint.net has a simple paintbrush, and it's worked for me. It's a round paintbrush, so you won't have any of the special things with the fading as you go, or the all the other stuff that Photoshop paintbrushes can provide. But there's some extensions and stuff that can kind of simulate and help with that as well. Now, I mentioned the extensions. I'll show you some of them here. So under the render, there's the render tab is really awesome. Some of the things I found online. I mean, there's random shapes, so go with that one, and then you can basically pick all kinds of things. The types of shapes you want, the number of shapes you want, the maximum size. I mean, you can easily make a really nice looking background this way. Just pick a lot of shapes and then change the size of them. I mean, like, boom, you've got a background going on there. That was actually how I made the backgrounds for one of my first mobile games, actually, was using the shape feature in Paint.net. And then once you have something like a background, then you can go distort, and then you can say crystallize it like this, and then you can change the cell size. I mean, there's literally hundreds and thousands of different tools that perhaps you want to do something that you know is available in Photoshop. Chances are, if you just look it up and you just Google Paint.net and then the type of thing you're trying to do, then you can probably find an extension that can do something fairly similar. And you've got a blurs thing here, so you can add a bunch of blur if you want. I mean, if you've got an image, say, that you just want to blur something out, protect certain privacy information, that's really simple. Just select the area you want to blur it, and it's done, and then you save the image. Now, there is one other thing that I will say that I do not recommend Paint.net for. I'll drag the backgrounds over here and I'll show you. So I'll make a new layer here. I'll get rid of all this old junk. And that is if you do any work at all with typography. That is basically the art of text. You do not want to use Paint.net for this. I would recommend you use Photoshop, because I'll show you why. I'll just make you can do some really good typography in Paint.net. So I'll just do my name here, and let's pick a size. Let's pick a random font style. Looks cool. So then let's add a gradient to that. So then we'll duplicate that layer, and then on the bottom layer we're going to add a glow. And then on the top layer we're going to adjust the hue. Then let's duplicate that layer again, and then let's add a blur on the top layer. And then you can pick layer properties. So let's pick a property that will make it look cool. So let's go with difference. And I'll put a white background underneath so you can better see what it is that I'm doing. We'll make it a black background. There. So then let's go with the middle layer here. And let's go outline object. Add some white outline to it. Change the strength. And so there, I've done something that looks pretty cool. It's my name. And then, yeah, so then maybe you save that and maybe you use that as the cover of your website or something like that. But the problem is, once you've done all of that for your typography, then your client comes back to you and is like, oh, you misspelled my name. Well, the problem with Paint.net is that once text is placed, there's no way to edit it. You can erase letters. If I merge these three layers together, I can erase letters in between there. But now you can see there's a little blur effect going on here. And okay, so now it looks yucky because you've got the blur effect going on. And maybe you can put the new letters in there and you can follow all the same steps, but then you're trying to get these blur layers together and it's gonna look ugly. And so when you put the text in Paint.net, it's laid. There isn't anything else that you can do to change that. So with Photoshop, on the other hand, you can do all kinds of crazy effects and stuff on different layers, and then you can change the text afterwards. So like I said, typography stuff, unless you really know what you're doing, or you are 100% guaranteed that you're not going to misspell names, you're not going to have to add things and replace things or reuse things later, then you can do some pretty nice effects. But like I said, you have to know what you're doing. But when it comes to all of the image editing that I do, just about everything that I make, you can see the thumbnails on the YouTube video. And I mean, I don't have a whole lot of stuff uploaded yet to my website, The Jobless Coder, but eventually when I do, any images that are edited will probably be edited in Paint.net. I'll show you here, because I make mobile games too. This is a game that I made several years ago, and I made all of the game assets because as a programmer too, sometimes you need to be an artist. And I'm not very good with animating things smoothly, or making like characters that can walk, so I don't like to make those types of games, but things with simple shapes. This is a character that I had that was a water drop falling through a pipe, and you could rotate the device to rotate the water drop, and so it has different facial expressions that would change, and then there's no animation in terms of like moving limbs or arms that need to be dealt with. I made all of the buttons for the levels. You can see there's different keys, different power-ups, there's a shield, and so I really like simple shapes in the games that I make. My mobile games are very based on simple shapes. I did a wrench here. Whoops. Yeah, so I mean, that was some of the assets for the game that I made. in the App Store. And everything that I did was made using this software. I didn't have Photoshop at the time, and I don't have a license even now for Photoshop. So all of the image editing I do is in this software. And in addition to making YouTube thumbnails and resources for websites and assets for mobile games and different things for, I'll show you one of the other things here. I'll show you this really quick here. How to make a simple button. You want to make a button for an app, you want to make a button for a website. We'll just pick a color, we'll go on another layer here, and so there's your button, and then put some text on a new layer. So yeah, there's just a simple button, but one of the most, I'll show you what my favorite effect is in Paint.net, and I'll add a new layer here. And so what I'll do is, in the new layer, I will go Selection, Bevel Selection. This is part of the Bolt Baits extension pack, and this is my absolute favorite extension because I can add this nice bevel feature to the button, and so you can actually have it animated in two states. So you save one button as this and one button as the bevel, and so then you can easily switch between them when somebody's pressing. So the button's up, and then they go to press it, and then it looks like the button's down, or it's being pressed down. Or maybe you even make the down button a little bit darker as well, so you get a bit of that physical animation, because this here along the side looks like it's raised, and then you press it down. So that's how to make a simple button in Paint.net. That's my favorite extension. One of the other things that I do art for is something known as, it's an internet fandom known as the furry fandom. So I've got a DeviantArt page here with all of the characters and stuff like that. And then there's also a page here on a specific website called Furfinity where you can connect with people and do different art for their characters. So it's anthropomorphic style characters, basically animals that have been drawn as humans. So my character is a lizard. I got some pixel art here of Curtis Connors, as you can see. And then you've got all kinds of people. You've got people that are dragons and foxes and wolves, and you can actually do commissions for people. They will commission you to do art. And most artists, I would say, use either Photoshop or some alternative free tool. I don't know of any, I actually don't know any, like period, any other artist that uses Paint.net. Which just reminds me of one other thing that I should say about Paint.net, is that if you have a drawing tablet or you're the type of artist that want to use that for your digital art, then once again, you will need Photoshop for that. But like I said, Paint.net will do 95% of the things that Photoshop can for free. It won't connect to a drawing tablet though, so you will need to go with Photoshop for that. But because all of the art that I make is done in line art style and using the mouse, I'll basically show you how it's done. I'll go with white here, and so we'll go on the background here. So you just, let's make the line smaller. So you draw a line, and then you would change the nodes where you want it to be, and then you would draw another line, and then you would change those. And then you would draw another line, and you would basically build your character. You would build the body and the shape and everything. You would build objects, and all of that would be done using the line art. And then once the line art's placed, then you would go through with the magic wand tool and select different areas or different parts of the character that you have built and changes the colors in them. Or you can even use the custom selector tool to pick out different locations. And I will tell you that when other artists hear that this is the method that I do my art, number one, they're blown away because they've literally met nobody else that does what I do. And number two, they try to tell me, oh, you should learn Photoshop and you should learn to use a drawing tablet. And it's something that, yes, it would be nice to learn as an added asset, but I prefer this. So even if I did know how to use it, like I said, I know how to use Photoshop, I just choose not to because I prefer this instead. And I don't know, the Photoshop fanboys will probably tell you that, oh, you can't do really complex things in this software because it doesn't have X, Y, or Z, or it can't connect to a drawing tablet, it doesn't have brushes and stuff like that. And so, because you don't have all the fancy features, they just assume that the art that you make, it probably isn't overly elaborate, or it isn't super professional. But I'll show you a testament, and I don't know, you can be the judge of it. I think it's pretty good myself, but I'll show you the three recent art pieces that I actually made. So I was working on this one earlier, which is why I'm a bit tired at the moment. I was up all night, and because the new Pikachu Pokemon movie came out, I really like muscle. I really like drawing muscle, and I even go to the gym and work out too. And so that's my niche, that's my style in the fandom, is drawing muscular characters. So I've got here a muscle Mewtwo and Pikachu. And so zoom in here and you can scroll around. And I was able to do that using just the basic techniques that I just showed you right now. And in total, this piece took me about 8 or 9 hours to complete. That's the only downside too to the methodology that I use for my drawing style is not fast. It takes time, and it takes a lot of effort, and so I can't just pump out 3 or 4 drawings in a day like some other artist. But when I do my drawings, I think they have they have my style to them, but I think they have a semi sort of professional look. I mean, it doesn't look bad. It doesn't look like it was thrown together in just 30 minutes, and it certainly wasn't either. This one I made for an upcoming convention that's taking place locally. And so this one is the most elaborate thing that I've ever done in Paint.net before. This took probably 30 to 40 hours to complete, and I'll show you at the top here. If I open up the layers again, you can see the amount of layers that I have here. There's about 50 or 60 layers in total that put this piece together, and I've got the text and the typography there. So like I said, it can be done, but you better know what you're doing. You can see, if I zoom in, you can see how sophisticated the detail on the space background is. I've got the stars back there. You can see that they're really small. I've got crazy effects going on. I really like to experiment with color effects. And so a lot of the stuff that I do in my art, it'll just be experimenting, and oh, that looks cool, and yeah, that turned out really well. You can see the surfaces of the planet too have some crazy effects going on with like weather or the planet's surface. And then I've got the line art that I did, the building. You can see all of the rocks that I made, and then obviously the robot character as well. And I'll zoom right up to the head so you can see just what level of detail is going on here. I mean, it's absolutely immense. So don't try to tell me that you can't do elaborate, complicated things in a software that's not Photoshop simply because it doesn't have all the fancy features. So I'll zoom out here. Now, as I said, the upcoming convention that I made this for is actually Hollywood. It's like movies themed, and so I wanted to make something based on a 1950s style Alien poster. So this is the original poster here from The Forbidden Planet, is the movie by MGM. And so I'll try and get it in the same frame so you can see. There's the original. And then there's mine next to it. And so I did some edits with the title, so it says Forbidden Planet. And so yeah, you can see the comparison between the two, and this is what I used for reference, and this is what I got as an outcome. And all of that was done using Paint.net. And the convention staff actually noticed my art that I had done, and they liked it so much that they actually want to get a big print of it, a big large poster of it printed out for the charity auction. They have a charity partner they support. It's called the Underdog Society, and they shelter and they rescue animals, or not animals, as a general thing, but animals as in dogs specifically, that have been abused or left abandoned to die. And so they take them in and they bring them back to health. And the convention helps to raise charity for that. And my art is actually going to be featured as one of the charity items, which is really really surprising. I'm really grateful, and I'm really happy that that happened. And the last piece of art I'll show you is another piece that I did based on a con theme. It was back in March, the one that was local, and it was Vancouver, Midsummer's Night Dream. So it was a Shakespeare thing, and so I did this William Shakespeare print, and you can see the level of detail. If I scroll in there, you can see there's the shading under the scales. So I've got the scales, I've got the shading under the scales, and I've got the line art, and I did some fairly nice work with the typography. This logo in the corner I didn't do, that was taken directly from the website, but everything else I was able to do. This piece took me about, I'd say, 8 hours, and so this one took about 8 or 9 hours. This one took about 8 or 9 hours, and this one was about 40 hours of work. And so it takes a lot longer to complete the same thing than it otherwise would for some artists using Photoshop, but it can be done, and it can be done well if you know what you're doing when you're using Paint.net. That's about all I have to show you on this software for now, but I really thank you for watching the video, and please let me know in the comments section if this helped you at all, if this is some resource that you find useful, if this is something that you would recommend to your friends to use, and let me know if you actually found this bit of information helpful, and I'd really like to hear that. And if you find it helpful, then feel free to subscribe for more content in the future, and I'll also be making a video at some point about the starving artist philosophy and working for art as working as an artist for profit, and I'll be talking about that as it relates to jobs as well. And thank you for watching the video. Bye.